All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Canterbury Tech lunchtime session. I think we're going to get started. We're just going to run through some informational slides to get going. So first up, we just want to thank our cluster sponsors, so Crescent, Lumen, UC Business School, and AWS, who make this stuff possible. So thanks, guys. Louisa, our new GM, has done a wonderful job of organising a couple of discounts for Canterbury Tech members, the latest of which is a discount to the executive education short courses. So if you're interested in doing one of those and getting a 10% discount, you can email them at the email address over there and mention that you're a Canterbury Tech member and you'll get a discount. I'm just going to pass over to Louisa now, who's going to talk us through a couple of initiatives coming up. Let me just go back. Over to you, Louisa.
Thanks, David, and thanks to Stratos for your ongoing support of Canterbury Tech. Fantastic to have you guys on board today. Couple of updates about some special projects that have been happening in the background. So we've heard from our members that everyone's having problems with skill shortages and finding staff. So two initiatives, one which we've partnered with Christchurch NZ around this Power Up Your Future, which is focusing firstly on getting women who may be interested in transferring into a tech career. We had fantastic response from last month's session with over 50 attendees and everyone getting a lot more information about what they could do to take those first steps into tech. And there'll be another one running, I think, on the 26th. We heard lots of women were there because men had encouraged them to go. So if you know women around you that would love to step into a tech career, then please help them out. I'll just back to the other one. Yep. And the second is a fantastic research program that previous GM Neil Hamilton kicked off in collaboration with Dorinda Britton. So this is focusing on creating the best way to get dyslexic people into the workplace by attracting, supporting and retaining them. So 1 in 10 people are dyslexic. So there's a really untapped group of people there who are very well suited to careers in tech. And so we'll start to share some stories around those two things as they evolve. There's some opportunities if you're looking for staff but can't find them. You could host a Lincoln student who's coming out of their Masters Applied Computing program. They're looking for expressions of interest by Wednesday the 21st, so by tomorrow, last day. But you can get a student for 300 hours free of charge. And they can deliver a whole suite of things for you in that time. So it's from February to May, I think it runs. ARA will also be doing a similar thing soon, so I'll post on social around that shortly. ARA is asking us to ask our members around what skills gaps you have. So look out in our next newsletter and please help fill out that survey if you want to help contribute to the right skills coming through those wonderful educational institutes that Canterbury has. And the last thing, the government has just released on the 14th a new digital strategy for Aotearoa, and there is an opportunity to hear me talk along with some other digital focused people. I think we've got Leanne Watson from the Chamber, we've got Simon Anderson from Christchurch NZ, and we've got some people from TUANZ, the Tech Users Association, at the town hall. It's a free event from 5 to 7 on Thursday night. Thank you. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Louisa. Just to remind you as well that we've got the Tech Summit coming up, 24th November at UC. We've got a great lineup of speakers. We'll start trickling information through about that soon. Fewer than 100 tickets, so if you need a ticket, get it now. We've also got Dev Academy coming to Christchurch, so that's quite exciting. It's another path for people to get into tech. I think it's targeted at undergraduates. So they're doing an event at the Welder on the 22nd of September. Then we've got the ITP. They're doing an event which I think is focused at folks in the education space. So there's a big conference 4th to 6th of October at ARA. And then we've got the Agri-Food Tech Summit, which ties in with our next monthly event, actually, which is on the same kind of topic. But that's in Auckland on the 10th to the 11th of October. Speaking of which, the October monthly event, it's on Tuesday the 4th, and that's going to be at the Loft, and it's got a focus on food, fiber, and agri-tech. Okay, so that's all the announcements out the way. I'd like to introduce Steve Knutson, who's our speaker today, and I feel quite well qualified to introduce Steve, seeing as he's my business partner at Stratos Technology Partners. Over the years, I've got to know Steve well, and I think I can say that few people have as much passion for sharing their knowledge and giving back to the local tech community as Steve. He's an author, a blogger, a vlogger, and a Microsoft MVP, which is just a recognition from Microsoft that he is an expert in this field and he gives back to the community. Over the years, Steve's done dozens of internet projects. I was going to write or say hundreds there, but I'm not quite sure it's hundreds, but it wouldn't be far off at Steve, I think, for a wide range of organizations. And I think it's fair to say that he's become an expert in helping organizations foster collaboration and a modern work environment through the use of Microsoft technologies. So Steve, great to have you here today, and I'll pass over to you.
Thanks very much, Dave. That was very kind intro, and yes, and yeah, I guess it's been also just like to say Dave's a great guy to work with, because between the two of us, I think we have managed to do something pretty great over the last 11 years, but that's a topic for another day. So today's topic is about building better digital workplaces. So I guess my background in this comes from 2 points of view. The first one is from working across lots of organisations of all shapes and sizes across New Zealand, Australia, and some further afield, and also actually within our own business as well. So as Stratos has grown, we've learned a thing or two along the way, and it's sort of helped, I guess, shape my thinking on what a great digital workplace looks like, and some of the things that I'm going to share about today. So I guess for those people that don't know Stratos, just a wee intro, we are Microsoft 365 and digital workplace consultants with a massive development team off to the side. So we're the small team within the big team at Stratos at the moment. Where our objective is to turn the tides on the development team by building a bigger team. So I mean that in the nicest possible way. They're a great bunch of people. We build digital solutions for clients, whether it's in our custom dev side or in our Microsoft 365 side. But in my side of the business, we're doing a lot of work around SharePoint, Teams collaboration, workflow solutions, information management, and intranets. I'm actually coming to you today from Taranaki, where I'm working with a client at the moment to set out a bit of a strategy for these very things. One of the first things I think you need to think about when you think about digital strategy is that strategy is your longer term view. And so you really want to be looking out into the future. And somebody said at a conference I was at recently, if you want to understand what the future looks like, understand how 10-year-olds today work. So if you think about your own upbringing at school and so on, if you're my generation at least, which is getting up there in numbers now, not quite as old as some of us people on the call, but I'm up there a wee bit. You'll know that when we started at school, we worked sort of almost solo. We didn't really interact and collaborate with each other. But how the world's changed. We now, if you look at the 10-year-olds are digital first. They haven't known anything else. They work with digital technologies natively. They collaborate naturally. And that's quite different to my generation. When you look in the workforce, you'll see there's people in your workforce from across all age groups. And we don't all work the same. We don't all have the same values. But I guess when we're building, the key thing here is that we need to build things for the future. We should be building for those generations that are coming through. And we should be helping the people that are currently in the workplace now to understand and work with the technologies and as well. So we've got to cater for everyone. So what is actually a digital workplace? It's quite simply a place where we work digitally first. And the key thing here is first, because there are many places that I would say over the years would have digital technologies, but they're not actually a digital workplace, because the digital technology is not or digital is not the way that they worked. But that's becoming now the way that we must work because of hybrid working. The pandemic's accelerated this, of course, and also because technology now is involved to the point where it allows us to work far differently than we could even a few years ago. So digital workplace isn't just about technology, it's about integrating our work world and the digital world into the way we work. It's about the mindset of the organisation to embrace digital working. Not all organisations do. It's about connecting people and empowering them to get things done, and I'll extend that into wherever they are and whenever they need to. So digital workplaces shouldn't be time or geographically bound. And none of, when we do this really well, a digital workplace empowers the people that work within it. It drives efficiency and enables us to work in new ways. So why does it matter? Well, it really boils down to how we engage with our work, our workplace and our workmates, and whether we're getting the things we need to get our job done. So that's not just the task, it's a whole lot of other things which we'll talk about shortly. When we're working in a digital world, it's quite easy to feel disconnected. I've experienced this myself working away from the office. I used to work for a company where I spent a lot of time working away from my main team, and I would slowly become more connected with the people I was working with in the client side and less connected with the team of people that I worked with. The same happens in the digital world, and especially when we're working remotely for long periods of time, our connection with our employer weakens. It's a natural thing. And we can slowly lose our sense of belonging to an organisation, and work can become quite transactional. For employers, there's a really key thing that we need to understand here, which is that the cost of this is retention and business performance. So if we don't have a good working environment for our people, they'll become less engaged, and retention will become an issue, and ultimately our business performance will be affected. In a recent survey, well, the survey is actually from 2022, Citrix went out and talked to their customers, employees, about what is important in their views of the digital workplace. And there's a few things which came out of this. One is that the first one was that 55% of people that responded said that the IT environment they work in was more complex than it was 2 years ago. So working remotely had actually made things more difficult. 83% of people said that they were using applications not approved by IT to get work done, creating this shadow IT environment. And one really simple way you could look at this is the digital whiteboard. So people soon realized after we went into lockdown that having work visible was important. And so people started looking for tools. They found digital whiteboards as an example and would start using them. Now, those things were happening without IT approval or outside of the enterprise IT estate. They're really great for getting people working, but they created other problems later. 96% of organisations that they surveyed said that they'd started a digital transformation, but only 21% think that they'd reached a mature state. So that means there's a huge amount of work to be done in this area around actually improving how we work digitally. And finally, 83% of organisations said that they had really poor analytics on the usage of technology in workspaces. And this really means that when they're making decisions, they don't have the data to back the decisions up. So they're making it up in an absence of data. Poor employee engagement is probably the single biggest issue. And the reason why this is a huge issue when we have disconnected employees is that it affects the organisation in many ways. We have low productivity or reduced productivity. We have people that are more likely to take unplanned leave. We have people that are more likely to leave the organisation. I know there's some recruiters on this, so it's great if you're a recruiter, but it's not great if you're the employer. It's also takes up a lot of management time. It has ripple effects that can affect other employees across your business, and it can have a negative impact on your customers. Employee Hero did a survey back in 2021, and it said that 41%, there was 41% less absenteeism in organisations where there was good employee engagement compared to those with bad. Just after the pandemic started in 2020, Gallup did a survey which showed that that people were 85% of people were actually disengaged from their employer. So that's a huge number of people. So only 15% of people actually saying they were engaged. That's quite an incredible number when you think about it. This has kind of led to a follow-on phenomenon, the Great Resignation, where people start looking for opportunities elsewhere. Maybe the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. And then finally, there was another report from, another stat from Employee Hero around employee engagement, or organisations with engaged employees generating 21% more profit than those with poorly engaged. So that's actually quite a large effect on your bottom line, and it's a really good reason from a business point of view to focus on improving digital workplaces or your digital workplace. So what do people need? So my first question, it's a great question, Steve, is it's really about people. So if we look at this diagram here, we've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the needs of humans. So these are our needs in the workplace that help us feel like we belong to something. So starting at the very bottom, the very basic things that we need for survival, from like our air, water, food, shelter, clothing, and the environment we're in. And as we progress up the pyramid, we go through safety, a sense of belonging, a feeling of self-esteem, and then actually the ability to be the best we can. And you can't do these top bits if you don't do the ones below them. You've got to work your way up this pyramid. You can't just go, I'm going to deal with this piece at the top and not the other parts. So from a digital workplace point of view, we can implement systems, processes, and features into our workplaces to enable us to reach some of these. And I've just got a few examples on here of the sorts of things we could do. So at the very bottom, it's equitable access to technology. If we don't have equitable access to our digital workplace, then people are being left out, and so therefore we're not meeting their physiological needs. Right at the very top, we've got things where people can self-develop, they can build their skills and capabilities and become better at what they do. And in between that, we've got a whole bunch of things that you can do to help enable, help get up the top of the pyramid to this top area up here. Key things: making your work visible, praising your team, highlighting positive behaviours. Those types of things all help with people to feel connected back to their organisation. The belonging one here is a really important one, especially when people are working remotely a lot. So where do we start? Well, we can start by removing the word digital from the topic, because this isn't a digital workplace issue, this is a workplace issue. If we don't deal with the workplace culture and so on, then we can't possibly build a good digital workplace. It's simply not something that will happen. One can't happen without the other. We should be focusing on the needs of the employee, not just the jobs that they do. So this goes beyond what I do when I come into the office each day. It shouldn't be an endless list of tasks. I need to have other things to feel fulfilled and engaged with what I'm doing. We should be focusing less on pushing information and more on two-way interaction. People, especially when they're remotely, like to have ways to engage with the organisation interactively. If we're just pushing information at them, squirting it at them like a fire hose, then they're not going to engage well with that information. Eventually, something will start to slip, and we won't have any way of knowing because the interaction was in one direction. All you'll see is smiling faces. And then we want to take friction away from what people do. So we need to make it easier to do things. And one thing which you think about here is processes that work really well in the physical environment but don't work well in the digital. If you have a process that requires approval with a physical signature on a printed piece of paper, for example, then that doesn't translate into the digital world well. We need to take that process and convert it into a digital process. And then we should look at optimizing that too, to remove any other things that we can take out of that process that hinder a person from getting a job done. We also should think about this from the point of view of when are they doing the work. So if people are working flexibly, it might not be during normal business hours, or where are they doing it from? It might be physically separate locations. And if we do this well externally, this will also work internally. So in the office experience will benefit from this also. We need to create connections for opportunities for connectedness. If people are disconnected, so they're unable to engage with the organisation, they will fall away very quickly. So connectedness is about making opportunities to interact that are not around your back-to-back 30-minute meetings all day, but giving other opportunities where people can connect with each other, either socially, they can connect with people that they wouldn't normally talk with in the workplace, they can have those sort of informal opportunities to engage. It might be not just a conversation, but it could be providing feedback to things, somebody posting, providing information and getting feedback. So lots of different ways to connect with people in your organisation. And the best thing that you can do for this whole where to start question is ask your team. Your team will tell you, if you ask them and you have an authentic question, they will tell you what you need to do. You just have to then follow through and do it. The next key thing I think which we need to think about in a digital workplace is consistency. So if we create a consistent working environment, the where and the when questions help people to understand when things are going to happen and where they need to go to find information out. So, for example, when do I find out about a project update? Maybe there's a new initiative happening. When will I get an update on that information? Is that at a random time during the week, or is it consistently at the same time? When will I get updates on projects? When does the SLT update the company? Is this something that they do every Monday? Is it something they do on a Friday afternoon? Is it something that's done monthly? It's all of these things really around the rhythm of which you communicate and provide information to the organisation. Pretty key things to helping with engagement. And we also have a couple of bonus questions here, which is really the who and the why. So when I am producing content, for example, to go on my intranet, it should not only answer, it should include the who and the why. Who do I talk to get more information on this, or if I want to know more, and why are we doing this, or what's the purpose of this piece of information I'm receiving? Now, this slide's probably going to surprise you a little bit. So, as Dave mentioned, I'm a Microsoft MVP, so I spend my life living in Microsoft, in the Microsoft world. But really the tools that we use here are irrelevant. We could do this in a Microsoft world, but what's more important is actually choosing tools that meet some criteria. So we need to firstly make sure that everyone in the organisation has access to the digital workplace. If they don't do that, then we are creating another problem for ourselves. We need to use tools that enable us to collaborate together interactively, so working across teams, across people, across organisations. We need to allow people to complete tasks in one place. So we don't want to jump between multiple tools to complete a single task. It's best done in one tool if we can. We should look for opportunities to automate our processes, and all of this should be done with a secure and safe environment in mind. So we want to make sure that we're allowing people to work safely in a way that they're not going to get themselves into trouble. A stat I heard many years ago was that 80% of all data loss or data incidents in organisations is actually accidental. It's not purposeful. So create an environment that makes it hard for people to have accidents, and everyone will be happier in the long run. We also want to avoid a few things. So we want to avoid using multiple tools for the same job. So for example, working with, if I'm running projects, using the same tools across projects rather than using a different Kanban tool, one project versus another, and then accidentally locking information into these spaces that people don't have access to or are restricted to just that project team. we want to avoid locking people out of information. So open access to information helps people get on with the job and answer questions themselves. Using tools that locks people out of the information has a negative impact on that. And we also want to avoid changing tools too often. So often we walk into organizations where they've tried something, they didn't like it, they've tried a new thing, they didn't like it, they've tried another new thing, and so on. So what we want to do is avoid that churn of products, because it just creates islands of information, endless change challenges, and ultimately doesn't allow people to just get on with the job. And sometimes that tool doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be consistent. So how do you eat this elephant? The answer is one bite at a time. Apologies for the dad joke on this one, but I think the first thing that we need to really do here is assess your current state so that you understand what it is your team needs or your organisation needs. And I'd separate needs from wants here. So needs allow you are things that you actually need to do. Wants are things that, you know, I want, not a need. So focus on the needs. Agree priorities with the business. If you don't agree this with the business and you try and do it individually, you won't succeed. Pilot ideas, build minimum viable products, test things out, get feedback, and most importantly, iterate. No one gets digital workplaces right the first time, and often the biggest challenge is that they take too big a bite. And so the answer, again, to how you eat an elephant is that you do it one bite at a time, and I'd say make those bites small so that you can progressively, incrementally improve your environment rather than trying to do a big bang. Big bangs generally don't work very well in this scenario. So before I wrap up, I've got 4 questions that I want you to have a think about for your own work environment. The first one is, what is missing in your digital workplace? So what things are you missing that would be great to have? What things do you need? What things should you improve in your environment? So are there processes that you have that work well in the office but don't work well when you're away from the office? Are there things that you need access to that you can't easily access? Are the tools you're using, there are too many tools? What would you improve? What don't you need to do anymore? So are there things that you can take away and no longer do in your environment? And fourth question, can everyone participate? So if you're building a digital workplace, can everyone in your organization participate in that workplace if they want to? And if not, why not? So take these questions away, ask your team, have a talk to the people that work around you, and maybe the people that you work with across organizations as well, and see if you can make some improvements in your work environment. So that's really the end of my presentation, and I've got plenty of time, I think, for questions. So if anybody's got questions, I'd love to try and answer a few.
Steve, have you got any advice about blended teams where you've got some people who are almost exclusively digital, potentially remotely, and others that are more on site, and how you blend those environments together successfully?
So that's a big question that I think everyone's asking, Julian. It's a good one. I think the thing. So one of the things I saw recently was a stat on how many people in that sort of remote working scenario, how often they come into the office, and it was actually a very small number of organisations where a small number of people that never come in, and the numbers that come in part-time or sometimes was higher. So the key thing that they were saying there was that when people come into the office, make it worth their while. If I'm in the digital space, then there's an equity issue that you want to make sure that people have access to information and to participate in discussion and so on, whether they're remote or not, and equally. And something we've done in our teams is like either the meeting is online or it's in the office. It's not a mix of the both, mainly because that helps with the equity question.
Great, thank you.
Steve, I think we've got another question here from Vaughan. How do you keep control of automation solutions? So do we let users create their own solutions, or should this be centralized? So the governance of these sorts of things.
So Vaughan, this is a really good question, and it was actually one I discussed with a client this morning. And I think the approach that I've seen work really well is when you separate organisation process from personal productivity. So if I need to have a little notification that comes to me if I get an email from a particular person, or file some documents when they come in from a specific email address to somewhere, because it helps me with my individual job, then that's great. It helps my personal productivity, and if I leave the organisation, it's not going to impact. But as soon as we cross that line into organisation business process, and the big question here is at what level are you talking? Are you talking like an enterprise level client process that runs across departments, or a process that's within a department, or perhaps a process that's within an individual team? And there's different levels. But at some point in there, you decide at what point do we need to ensure that this process is supportable, and we choose to take an approach where we've got a more formality around the development of that process. And this is something I've seen done really, really well at a couple of large manufacturing companies, and both in Canterbury actually, where they have put that governance layer and made the line really clear. There are tools that you can use to manage this also. So when you perhaps limiting what sorts of data you can connect to with an automation versus at the enterprise level, it might be your ERP system. But if it's individual personal productivity, you might prevent access to that. So you need to request access to put some sort of controls in place.
Thanks, Steve. One more from Eric. Can you comment on best practice for using surveys effectively in a digital environment?
Yes, so there's a few questions in this one, a few things on that one, I think. So the first one is, don't survey for the sake of surveying. You really need to make sure that you're asking people the right sorts of questions, not over surveying people. Do it once and make sure that you then follow up and act on the response that you get back from the survey. You might not like the answers sometimes. I think that's something that some things you'll get back will be quite challenging. Another thing I think about here is about around surveying is actually there are tools, for example, in the Microsoft world where information is linked to an individual, like Microsoft Forms. It could be that using a third-party tool like SurveyMonkey, for example, where the information's outside your environment and you're collecting information. So there's a privacy and information management part of this also. So make sure that you think about what it is you're collecting. And the Privacy Act really says quite clearly that you should only collect the information and use it for the purpose. Collect the minimum information you need and use it only for the purpose that you collected it for. So don't reuse that information for other things unless you're very clear about it, because if you're collecting personal and private information, it needs to be treated well. So hopefully there's an answer in there somewhere for you, Eric. Cool.
Okay, we've got another one from Chris. What do you recommend around the fact that many tool sets are bolting on features all the time, e.g. restricting people to using all portions of Teams rather than having a chat app, a meeting notes app, etc.? What are your thoughts around allowing tools that have duplicated features if the core tool set one isn't used?
Yes, that's a really a big question too. So I think the thing I'd say with this is it depends on the maturity of the organisation. So if you're just beginning, don't throw all of the toys out to everyone at the start. Pick a set and say, we're going to get good at these ones first. And once we've reached a maturity level where we're comfortable, we'll then start introducing new tools. And you need to have some governance processes around this, because if you, in organizations, a phenomenon that happened sort of straight after the pandemic lockdown began was that people rolled out Microsoft Teams, for example, very rapidly. And it was a needs must activity. So you needed to roll it out because we needed tools. And then what's happened following on from that is a whole lot of work to now tidy up the spaghetti, I guess, that was created through that process. So putting some governance in place before you roll out tools, and at least answering some of those basic questions about what do we need and what are we going to use and when, will help you to keep things tidy and in control rather than untidy and out of control. There is a Microsoft has got a framework for assessing your maturity level when using some of these tools. It's quite a good place to start. But I think the number one rule would be don't pick too many things. Just pick one and then learn it. And then once you're ready for that, take the next one.
Okay, Steve, we've got one more from Tracy, asking you to comment on where to start with Microsoft tools for personal productivity. What gives you the biggest bang for buck?
So it's a really good one. I would say tasks, actually. So keeping track of the tasks that you do. I'm a fan of Planner. Planner is not the perfect Kanban tool, right? It's not, but it's inside the ecosystem. And what it lets you do is keep track of the stuff that you need to get done. And it lets you show and allows others to see what it is you're doing. So you're not creating a silo. So so it's making that, letting others see what you have on your list is a powerful thing. And I think the other thing I would say is the power of the share button. Like when you share a document with someone, you save the other person the agony of trying to find that document, open the attachment, make sure they're on the right version, all of those things. So the share buttons are really, really underrated power tool, I think, in the whole Microsoft ecosystem.
Cool. All right. I think those are all the questions we've got. So I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks, Steve. That was a great presentation. There's been lots of interaction, lots of feedback. Just a reminder to everyone that we do have a YouTube channel where we share all of these lunchtime events, and we'll be putting this up here. So yeah, give it a like and pass it on to anyone else who might be interested. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks very much, everyone.